Rod came over from Ferguson to join us to talk about work.
All right.
Are we starting?
I don't know.
Let me adjust my hat.
I think we're started. All of this is going in.
Probably leave out that first portion. The bloopers are sometimes not appropriate here in the Brave City Bat Cave. But we are here with Rodney.
Yeah,
We don't want to call you a guest anymore. Hopefully you'll be a constant contributor, part of our team. But over the river, about what, 9 miles?
20-minute drive.
Yeah, over in Ferguson, Missouri. And we've already done one podcast, so
I can do
really
it.
want to hear
I can
the
do it in 15.
you want to hear the Rodney Fickas story that was on Great Pages episode, what, John?
Yeah, good question.
Let's just say episode 13.
That's about right. Let's see.
Yeah. I'm just shot in the dark. That was on location at
At the shop. Yeah.
Bro,
Soul
on the
Craft.
nose, episode 13.
Look at
Wow.
Really? All
that.
right.
Yeah.
That was a total guess.
So a quick little summary, Rodney started Soulcraft, which is a maker space in Ferguson, mentoring
And
blah, blah.
retail shop.
and retail shop, yeah.
When I have things in there to
Do you
sell.
ever sell anything?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. When I have things. I'm so busy. It's the shelves are usually empty because, I'm mentoring. So
So you're a very natural person to just sit here and chat with us about work today.
yep, glad to be here.
So who's starting this?
Well, the conversation a lot the past 2 weeks has been around work and artistry and artisanship and the artistry of the kingdom. And, Rodney and I are actually working on a project today together. And I said, man, just come over a little early and jump on this podcast with us. Because if you listen to episode 13, is that right, John?
Yeah.
You know that his story, and in some ways, all of our stories went from, I think the kindest way I could say it is because none of it was bad. None of it was damaging or detrimental. But there is an assembly line type spirit that I have sensed a lot of my adult life, that I wouldn't attribute it to the church. I would just attribute it to Babylon, of just fall in line, do what you're supposed to do. You kind of get that image of gray in color. The gray image is, just doing the same thing over and over, day after day for 40, 50 plus years. And then color comes into play and you realize you still have some mojo in you to create. You still have some juice to be an artist. You remember dreaming. And one of the ideas that we talk about is this passage that says, when the Lord brought back the captives of Zion, we were like those who dream, or we were like those who could dream again, and our mouths were filled with laughter. And so it feels like
It's freedom.
yeah, the liberation. It feels like the kind of one of the ruling spirits or powers of Babylon is to keep us from dreaming, specifically kingdom dreams. So y'all know that Rodney's story was he felt like he was being called out of that, whether it was in the corporate world or in the traditional
Prevailing
church
church
world, prevailing church world, to become an artist again. And I'll land with this. Like, I've talked to so many leaders over the past 10 years that it feels like there's a ceiling they keep hitting. It's like we want to do this and think this way and try this, but I can't get beyond this ceiling and I don't know what it is. Some people want to attribute it to religion or to leadership. We need to change our leadership models. We need to, what's something else? We
Do a
need-
better job vision casting.
Vision cast better. And I just think, man, what if it's none of that? Like, what if it's actually a power that's governing over what you're doing? So it doesn't actually matter how you do it, but it's more about the liberation and the freedom to be an artist. And then, of course, what we've been talking about is to work hard. And
Like,
if you
to me,
feel
that's the one thing, because everybody's, like, I think everybody gets visions. They may not be from God, but it seems like there's no lack of vision, like where people get excited about something new. But it does seem like as we watch people try to start things, that it gets high strung on not working.
not working.
Yeah, like they just don't understand the amount of actual physical labor that it takes when you are an artist and kingdom type of building type stuff, so. It is for sure true. The ones that seemed like Rodney went from vision to retail space up and operating in about a year. We went up
Less than a year.
from get a free building to post commons starting in about a year. And people always come into your shop is fantastic, or they'll come into the post and they'll go, this is great. And they will be in love with the vision of what that's become.
Yeah.
But the story was 8-12 hours a day for a year building this thing out.
Mhm.
Or John, I know I've been to Tampa at least 20 times over the past 6-7 years. And it feels like every time I come, some group is touring your shop to show people how cool it is.
People think real good a bit, yeah.
But they get to leave while you stay and work,
Mhm.
and you're still to this day working in the shop. And those are the parts that I feel like are lost on the hope of artistry. And I want to say it this way, there's a circumvention that has somehow taken place. If we want to talk about ministry in particular, in a lot of ministry circles, where we've almost figured out ways to not have to work hard to pull off some of the things that we want to pull off, but it's not accomplishing the goals that we want to accomplish.
Yeah, I would say, like, what I've often seen is we want to find that next thing that works, but we don't want to put the work in, right?
Yeah.
And often what works, or what we perceive as works, is not really, the kind of work we ought to be putting in anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what I grew weary of, is what's the next thing that works? What's the next thing that's going to cause growth? What's the next thing that's going to close the back door? And just, let's talk about the front door for a while, right?
What comes to mind is you say like what works. That just like was a fascinating turn of phrase to me, because it's about outcomes.
Yep.
So it's an orientation toward the growth, or toward it. What is working? What is it that we mean when we say working? And it's not an orientation around process. It's not an orientation around doing the work or enjoying the process, or some kind of faithfulness to the journey, as opposed to like what is supposed to come of it.
Yeah.
And I think so many of our conversations end up coming back to like this, almost this, like, I don't know if disassociation is the right word, but like moving your eyes away from results, whether it's in a relationship with the poor, in something we're putting our hand to, or whatever, that we somehow are like needing to move from being results oriented.
Yeah.
I don't know how that lands, but that's just what kind of get my wheels turning when you're talking about
Well,
that question about what works.
It's dangerously prophetic, because obviously any time you try to push against a cultural norm, you find yourself in danger of swinging the pendulum too far, right? Like we all actually care about results. The best example right now in this like exact moment is we just dropped a song that Hugh and I wrote. And
That's right, singer-songwriter.
Amazing.
it's about work, and like the song is kind of centered around work
Mhm.
and the sacrament of work and the peace that work can bring, but it's also the whole idea of the song is artistry. And I listened to it last night after kind of like the final master and everything. And there really is something, maybe we can talk about this thought is there's something so valuable to loving what you create. Just to being so happy with what you create. And I've found myself all throughout the years of actually not caring enough about the results. So there is some benefit to that. Like I think about the artists in the Renaissance. You have to assume, or the, you know, the classical musicians throughout history, like you have to assume that they were concerned about what people thought about their art.
Mhm.
I mean, we got a soul craft, handmade coffee table right here, beautifully done. You have to care about what the client or what the world thinks about your art.
Cause you put your little stamp
Yeah,
that says like, this is Soulcraft.
Mhm.
Think about the Lord wanting to put his stamp on the stuff we're doing
right.
versus not wanting to put his stamp on something that is not what he like.
Yeah, I think the reason one of the things that I think why results matter, why the outcome or what the end product or whatever you want to label it, why that matters is because of what it helps us imagine, right? I think a lot of what we value as work or the things that we measure in our work are unimaginative. They don't really help us see the things that are, that need to be seen.
Which to me, that's the result. I need a better word there. That's the outcome
Mhm.
of being driven by results.
Right.
So I guess what we're trying to find like this happy agreement of, because again, I want to make it personal. I'm listening through this song last night. And by the way, the song is called Fence Line. And the idea behind the song was it came from an actual day where Hugh and I were building a fence at his farm, mostly him. I think I did one day and it took you about 30. So 1 or 2 days, but the whole time we're working, we're talking about how the pain, the stress, the frustrations, the loss, all these things of life, there seems to be a healing that takes place on the fence line.
Mhm.
When you're just getting bruised and bloodied and working. And so he went back and just kind of basically kind of wrote a poem about it. Is that okay to say you wrote a poem?
That sounds great. I never thought.
He just wrote some words down and they were inspiring. And so
Poetic.
we took those and we started forming them into an actual song. So now listening to the song, I have this tendency to truly, like, other than maybe my wife, not care at all what anyone thinks. Like, do I love this that we created? And I do. And I love that. And I think to start there could be a good starting point for any artist and any worker is I want you to be able to step back and love. Like I think about some of the things that we create within like the context of Christianity, man. There's no way that these incredible artists, these incredible creators or creatives are stepping back and going, I love this. But they do it because it works.
Mhm.
It's like, it's what people like. So we'll do it. We'll keep producing it. week after week.
It hits the formula, so there's nothing really that distinct. It hits the formula that we know will get those results that we. that-
Yeah,
I'm wondering if you got Rodney, because I know on your wall are these. You got pictures of stories.
Mhm.
Think of one that comes to mind right now where. When these young men are building something that unlocks something for them even.
Yeah, well, I would say, yeah, I'll get to one of those, because I think to kind of tap into what you guys are saying, I think why we don't care what other people think is because of the value we're getting, right? Because things that we make are remaking us.
Yeah.
Right, so, and that would be enough, right? It would be enough for me to continue to make and create and be an
Right.
artisan, just because of what's coming out on the other side is actually remaking me. And so I don't, and, others might want to try to, create math out of it or whatever and create, metrics around it, but formulas. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's what's doing in us. I mean, it brings you back to that fence line, of saying why this matters, why it matters to me, why it matters to the kingdom. And it's actually an encouragement to keep putting posting.
you know what I think too, man? I think formulas can be meaningful,
Sure.
but they're a pathway towards creativity. So even in your shop, almost everyone who comes in there for the first time, we guide them through one simple formula: making a picture frame,
Yep.
putting a meaningful image in it to tell their story.
And they're also asked to give it away. So,
Yeah.
so as we,
Which is part of the formula.
right, exactly.
Just like we
Yeah,
would
we're
do.
building, we're helping them understand that their craft ought to be for making things good, not just for their own good. Yeah.
I talk about basketball a lot because it's one of the two things that I love. And I'm working with my youngest son on basketball right now. And the big thing that we're focusing on is ball handling. So anytime we're together, we're doing very, very basic, kind of almost boring drills. I mean, he's 7, so he's just kind of working on both hands, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you know basketball, there's a player named Kyrie Irving, and he's everyone's favorite player in the NBA. Like whenever people talk about who do you love to watch, almost across the board, every NBA player will say Kyrie Irving. And the reason is because he's an artist.
Mhm.
He's worked so hard on the formula that now all he does virtually every time he touches the ball, you lean up in your seat to watch what he's about to create. So I think here's my point is kind of church as we know it, it almost feels like what we did. Let's go like Constantinian model, even though there's stuff before him. He's not to blame for everything. But it's like we created a formula because we knew people needed something to enter into, some kind of like Sunday school safe space to just hear about God and maybe connect. But then we just made the formula the whole thing. And part of what we've been working towards for years now with Brave Cities is like how to ebb and flow with both within a family infrastructure. Is what I'm saying making sense? Like formulas aren't, we're not saying formulas are evil.
Yeah.
But they're all purpose towards creating artistry, liberation. Go dream, man. Don't just come here and hear my dreams.
So Ken and John, you know this, the reason why I'm here is to always provide theological insight, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, so let me try it here this morning. Let these guys riff off this a little bit. You remember when God created the world, right? That was a work that God did, and it was great. Sin comes in, messes it up. And what happens is that the work that Adam gets to do in the garden now becomes cursed. So it's like the first time that work has like a negative connotation to it. There's now you're going to toil. Where I don't know what it was like for them to be in the garden and not toil, but they clearly had things that they were doing. It must have been a joy-filled whatever. It didn't feel like laborious work, so to
Right.
speak. But when sin comes in, it does something to affect this idea of work, and people don't want to work anymore, right? It just has that negative sense. Even today, like it's terrible. I was talking to a couple chefs up in our space the other night, and they were just lamenting how they cannot find anybody that truly wants to work. And he actually said, create in the kitchen anymore. They actually want, just tell us what to do and let me put in my 4-hour shift.
Same thing in like the contractor and carpentry and all
Yeah,
that.
it's
that
just,
world.
it's when you think about sin still being Babylonian sin, still ruling the world, it said all these people forgot what they could do to create, where it would actually, they would love being in the
Just
kitchen again,
love
whatever.
creating. Yeah.
And I think that's the redemption of work. So I think what Jesus allows is he allows now the remaking of,
So it can be
work.
redeemed.
It
The
totally can be
the
redeemed.
curse was assembly line, sweat of your brow.
Yeah.
Nothing you do really matters.
Oppressive boss, the whole deal.
You cut the weeds, they grow back. You cut the weed. The redemption is we actually can work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and it can, and we would all laugh because we all know we sort of jokingly lament almost every week like what we're working on, but we actually know we love it. Like deep down, we're doing this because we love it, whether it's a fix and flip house or renovating a space or helping a kid, build a frame. There's actually a great sense of love to this thing. So is that theologically correct, John? Like
I mean, yeah, it sounds right. Like original, the observation really is powerful that the original work originally was a gift. It predates the fall, like you're saying, and then it gets it gets transformed. And it's interesting because
post dates too. The city, the eternal city. It says that we will work there also. So
like, don't you guys get excited? Like when somebody reminds you, like when we pass into the heavenly realm, we don't just sit there and sing songs.
Love it. I love
like when
I
people
love
really
about,
exegete heaven, they go, no, we're actually all gonna have things that we get to do, jobs. And it brings a sense of like, whew, it's not gonna suck.
Yeah.
That we're just floating on clouds singing songs. So I just
with
go
your
like,
little theological treatise there.
yes, thank you.
Why I think treatise, why I think what we measure matters is because if what we're measuring is if what we measure doesn't measure up, then it feels like the curse, right?
Right.
And then we lose, then we grow weary, we lose energy towards it and that sort of thing. But if the things that we're working towards are helping to imagine things like grace and love and justice, things that will be present in the kingdom is the greatest work of art there ever was. And so our role as artisans is to help people imagine the thing and work at things to help people see those things. So when we measure that, those are harder to measure, right? How do you measure love? How do you measure justice? How do you measure mercy and grace? But if we know that, the heart work that we're doing and the work that we're doing in our cities is putting those things on display, then, it doesn't feel like the cursing.
Yeah. I wonder like when Paul tells Timothy, like even thinking about like when we think about like good newsing the world, people actually responding and being drawn to something, right? And Paul tells Timothy, go do the work of the evangelists. Mm-hmm. I think if we imagine Timothy going, well, shit, like, what do you want me to, like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. But what if it was this, Paul communicating, do this creative thing where you got to like build out this business for a year, and it's going to create a space where people come together,
hear good news,
and they're going to get to see and hear. I think actually that's what the work of evangelism is: space making, it's creative work. It's even in Brave City stuff, we bring back the Benedictine motto, ora et labora. The prayer is the works that we do, and the works that we do are how we pray. So there's no distinction between sacred and secular. But the work, if you want to join a Trappist community, and experience the joy that these cats have, then you're gonna work with us.
John, you were about to roll into something and I cut you off. You were saying from the beginning, there was work that was pure and then it got twisted. And I was saying how even in the end, it says that once everything's redeemed, once everything is made new, we're still working. We still have responsibility. Where were you going with that?
Not exactly sure, but I mean, the realization that work is a real gift. And even as you're talking, like the idea of saying like we're working on this thing because it matters and the things that we make are remaking us, that there is this way that like we all know these like moments of like good, holy, pure work. And most people do. This isn't just kind of like a theological framing. It's like there is work that is fulfilling, right? And there's things that we work really hard on that we all know, like we lose track of time, we get engrossed in the actual process. Not like it like flow state, I think is an amazing, like almost taste of what eternal life is. Like it's like the eternal now, you lose track of time, you're not self-conscious in any way, like you're not looking at what you're doing necessarily, you're just engrossed in the process. And I think like we have very real experiences of being like caught up in these like pure, holy kind of moments of work. And then, but also like you're talking about what you're saying, like this like assembly line kind of Babylonian, like people refer to work like employment as like soul sucking. Like you'll hear them like a soul sucking job or a thing that pulls something out of me. And I just think, man, that's it's a tragic situation, but the way that we orient ourselves toward hard work and the way that we are built in hard work. So as you were talking about this whole formula thing, and then you were using that to talk about like a process of doing. So what came to mind for me was I was just thinking about like that as like discipline, like there being like there is like a way to go about doing a thing, right? Like building a frame or a process of like, there's steps that we go through. But the way that we were using formula in the beginning actually reminded me of the kind of opening of I mean, I think this conversation really maps well to the opening of the book and the act one kind of, you brought up the song that you guys, which is actually like, the first paragraph of the first act in the book talks about like writing this song. And then I thought it was really interesting. So I just wanted to share this one little piece of this to remind you guys of it. But like you said, a few weeks later, I recorded the song in the studio. Everyone loved it except Hugh. As we discussed our stylistic goals for the song, it was clear that we're not coming at it with the same intentions. Hugh had two goals. First, he wanted to finally get paid, as he called it. The poor guy's been hustling and giving his time and life away pro bono for 40 years, and I couldn't fault his desire to go pro. Second, he had a dream of taking his wife, Cheryl, me and my wife, Lindsay, to the Grammys. Now, I would love for Hugh
I envision it now.
to accomplish these two goals because I'd benefit too. However, Hugh was understanding when I told him that I did not share nor could ever share his aspiration. You see, I'm cursed with artistic passion. I took the song and tried to put honesty to it, regardless of any payout. I wish I could break this rule, but I've never been able to see or pursue an artistic venture with dollar signs on it. I believe music has to be art fully and purely. And I could go on, but like that in that sense is like what we're talking about. Like you get into like the formulaic approach to a thing for the results, the Grammys, for the results getting paid, which actually in a very famous essay that I recommend everyone read called Why Work by Dorothy Sayers, she actually talks about a playwright and she's like, the way that you make a bad play is to look up and think about what the audience wants. And you see it in Hollywood all the time. I saw was it a Rick Rubin interview recently where he basically said the same thing. Like you will screw this up if you think about what the audience wants. He's like, I make music for me. And what she said, what Dorothy said in her thing is you have to serve the work. and let the work serve the community. She's like, you have to orient yourself toward the process, toward the work, and you could call that a formula. Like there's a way that you approach making music or recording a track, or there's a discipline associated with those things, but I don't think those are the same thing.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about that, I just thought that pretty well illustrated, or the difference maybe that we were trying to articulate.
Yep, it does. I almost think it can apply to everything, man. And the extent of the conversation can almost get it can almost get in the weeds, but last night we were just kind of talking in bed, and Lindsay had just met with we have some rental properties, and they're sharing all of the kind of existential vision of why we want to do rentals over other things sometimes is not really that necessary, but you can imagine like what we see that we can accomplish in a city when there's, you know, fair market rental and good landlords that love their tenants. And I could tell some really cool stories of relationships that we have and families that we've walked with beyond after they've moved out of a property, or multiple single mothers that live in properties that we get to just have deep relationships with. And she had just gone and met with a dental student that's coming into our city, and she met with her and her with him and his mother, and they talked about different ideas. And what turned into a 10-minute, I'm going to show you this little apartment, turned into an hour-long just sit down sharing life. They ended up coming up to the post and having coffee. Not Lindsay didn't come with them, but the mother and son came, and she was reflecting on, I love this part of what we get to do. Same thing with flipping houses. Like I have this thing called a contractor's guide, where it basically is about a 25-step process to every single house that you flip is the same. All same paint colors, same countertops, same everything. But Hugh just finished the flip yesterday, and it's going on the market today, right? And what I love about you guys is every one I've seen, you've only done 3 or 4 since I've been here, but every one is different. There's different colors, there's different features. I can always tell this was an Allie, Cheryl, and Hugh Halter you know, song. But so with that kind of analogy, all songwriters have their styles. And if you traced my music back to like 99, when I was writing like Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary type chorus, it's all the same. Like the style never changes for 25 years. People can go like, oh, you wrote this in the style of so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, but all of their music typically, like John Mayer, who's for whatever reason, one of my favorite artists, there's something about his way of doing things. You can listen to his Body is a Wonderland or Run Through the Halls of My High School, like poppy stuff that actually was brilliant for him to do, because it got him on the map for people, so he could then do the John Mayer trio, his blues stuff, his real heart. It still sounds the same. It still has his fingerprint on it. All of your flips seem to have your fingerprint on it. But what I love about it, my point in the beginning, is you don't have a contractor's guide where you just go in and you go, color, countertop, flooring, all the same, do it, get out, next one. You're going to make a lot more money doing that. And somebody could argue, do that because it's more lucrative, it's smarter, it's more efficient. And I would just always come back to
buy 50 gallons of that same color and just keep that in your shed.
just
Yep.
pour it out. Yeah. And I always would come back to, but why, man? Like, so your net worth is, you know, $500,000 more than it would have been, or are you sure? Like, if that's what you want to do, so you can then, you know, travel and go to the Grammys and finally get paid. Okay, but the two things I would say are, one, history has not proven that that's a good way to go. And number two, why would you want to live such an uncreative life? I don't think it's in the book, but it's in one of our grade papers. I talk about songwriting, and I talk about Don McLean's song Miss American Pie. I was watching this thing one night. It was talking about the greatest songs ever written, which of course is unbelievably subjective. And you could ask 10 people.
It's gotta be Kiss by Prince for sure.
Well,
gotta
that's
be.
what I'm saying. You could ask 10 people and 10 different songs would come up. But that song was mentioned as one of the greatest songs ever written, like start to finish, and how kind of like the Mona Lisa. Like if you just looked at it and had no idea of the history of or what it meant, you wouldn't think much of it. But art critics break this painting down in such a way that is so fascinating and so layered, and there's so much depth to it. And you think about certain songs like Kiss by Prince, which is a good example, or Lucy in the Sky, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles, or take your pick, a song by Nas or by Outkast, or the depth and the layers of these of the writing and the poetry and the experience and what they take you on. A lot of these songs that we would consider the greatest songs ever written were not the most commercialized hits, so to speak. They didn't cause fans to flock to their concerts all the time. I just think there's something so kingdom about what you said, John. I write for me, but it's not really for me. Like I say in the book, I'm cursed with artistic. What is it? Cursed with an artistic passion or something like that. That's not totally true. It's there. It's inside of all of us, the desire to create and innovate, but it takes that kind of prophetic edge to go, I'm not gonna succumb to the pressure of commercialization, of mass producing, or of what everyone around me thinks. I want to work, I want to create, and I want to be free.
Let me add to that with how this plays out in a wood shop. So when I have probably 98% of the makers that come into my shop have never made anything with their hands before. And to kind of illustrate what you're saying, I think, is that as their mentor, as somebody, as an artisan mentoring them, to awaken the artisan in them, it would be really horrible of me to say, do it this way, that way, or this, what I always do with them, I said, you're the maker, you're the artisan, you have a personality, you see things in the world differently than I see things in the world. So as we're making this piece, don't look to me to tell you how to infuse what I see in my personality, and I want to see yours in it. Because, at the end of the day, we don't need makers coming out of Soulcraft that look like little Rodneys. They need to look like Corey's and, the other, all the other folks that are in, the several hundred people that have been through there get the freedom to express their art, because of the way they see the world. So,
yeah.
A couple, kind of like in sort of like, what have we said phase? I just jotted some things down that, we brought it up a little bit in the book, but when we talk about the church being founded or centered on the apostle and prophet, just a reminder, the prophetic oftentimes is where you get the dreams, right? So you get the ideas. But we know a ton of prophetic people, both in Ferguson, Alton, all over the world, that get dreams. They literally get dreams about what they see, but they don't also do the work. And so dreams just kind of, I've got hundreds of dreams, things I've come up with, but I didn't put hand to plow. Yeah. And so I think when you're thinking about building a brave city, there really is a deal. You've got to combine prophetic and apostolic. Apostolic is really the entrepreneurial, and it's oftentimes it's the worker arm. Like if you're,
Foundation
yeah,
laying.
it's foundation laying. So you brick, mortar, that type of thing. When you just think about church as a spiritual act, you would say that the foundation laying is the Sunday service, get the building, get the sermons done. That's not what we're talking about. We actually think in a Brave City ideology that because we're trying to remake the world, that you have to put your hand to actual labor. So we would say a Brave City ideology, it is a Benedictine ideology. You're not going to be able to get it done without hard labor. And, so maybe think about apostolic prophetic. Don't just find yourself in a prophetic circle with dreamers. Don't be a dreamer yourself. So the apostolic is really critical. I would say I'm probably more apostolic, but less prophetic. I've always viewed Taylor as a really weird connection between very, very hard prophetic, but also very, very hard apostolic, like hand to plow, dreams and visions together. So whether or not that's embodied in one person or a team, I think in most contexts, it's going to be more of a team that you've got to bring those types of giftings together. But you have to have those. I just wrote down, even thinking about like AI coming into, this is now new technology, right? It wasn't even on the radar for most of us a year ago. But the things that used to be the works of the church, a lot of those can actually, you can see that the things that we put the highest priority on, you literally might be able to AI those. Like when I grew up in seminary,
Chat GPT,
Yeah.
your whole sermon.
I mean, I remember my Greek prof going, Halter, unless you spend 40 hours studying the
Right.
scripture in the Greek, you should not be behind a pulpit.
Right.
And then Google came on scene and I was like, bro, I can save like 39 hours.
Yeah.
Cause I can just Google what,
Or just YouTube.
well,
and
now
old version.
AI is going to trump Google, and you literally, so you may not need to do the work of sermon prep, even writing worship songs, whatever. But I think the one thing that AI will never be able to replace is the actual work of our hands in building things that rebuild our towns and rebuild the spiritual environment for our cities. So I just think it's almost like it's the way to protect against Babylon. Doesn't matter how crazy Babylon gets. If we keep working with our hands, we're actually going to be able to find
Yeah,
an
that might
artistic
sound, that might not connect fully. What Hugh's not saying is that, we can't get AI to actually build for us. What Babylon can't ever know, it's actually incapable of knowing, or let's say hypothetically AI is like what the soul that's connected to the heart of God knows what a city needs. That's kind of the asset mapping aspect of what we're talking about. Like I'm assessing what has happened here. We call it archaeology. I'm assessing what has happened here and I'm seeing where the kingdom is. And then I'm able to determine where it's covered up, what I can begin to uncover. We've shared this example 100 times, but like what was covered up here in downtown Alton was just a place to come and be together. It's almost as if it was like overgrown. And so for a couple of years, all we did was just cut away vines. I mean,
even the windows in this building were cinder blocked and plywooded over. So
right.
it was just like we literally 6 weeks of
chipping away. And the thing is no factory mindset, no assembly line or AI or Chat GPT can figure that out. Can understand the soul of a town, of a people that are hurting or lonely or outcast or fatherless. What is needed here? What presence, what space making, or what artistic offering is needed here just to bring good news back to the city?
Okay, so we start thinking about what we call this. This may not be correct, so work on this, but we did start a little bit with the cursive work. That the redemption, so I'll pose this, that the redemption of work is actually to create art. Is that what we've said? Is that accurate? Not accurate.
No, that's very accurate.
Mhm.
I'm waiting.
Redemption of work is to do the works of art. And to be an artist is the best way to work, clearly. But maybe John, a title, the redemption of work equals art.
It's good. You know, as you think about,
I'm looking up a passage, so keep talking.
as you look at, like, so I jotted some things down, like what goes over what, and I just thinking about the lens of art. This is interesting way to, so I was like thinking about what is it in the soul sucking kind of Babylonian posture? What is the thing we're putting over this other thing? And then we're talking about inverting these. So I think we have discussed like putting efficiency over meaning. So going like, will this get it done? Over like, does this matter? And is this meaningful? Or putting like expedience over, which is similar, I guess, to efficiency over like elegance, or I don't know, something like excellence, maybe just like going, there's this thing that we want it to be efficient. I wrote these down when we were talking about the house paint and like this, versus like the work of art that you guys are doing with each of your renovations, or thinking about the product over the process. And I don't know, I was just thinking like it seems like when you think about this as art, it's like art is not, you don't think about making a painting, you don't think about efficiency, right? It's like this isn't about the most efficient path, it's the most meaningful path, the most elegant path, the most it may be the hardest path, but it's the one that matters. And then I was just gonna throw something out I kept thinking about just to chew on and hear what you guys. So the word, I don't know if you know this, but the word liturgy that we use that like actually is like we think of like Sunday service type stuff, uh literally means work of the people, or something like public works or public service. Like, and I think it both in the lens of like cities have like public works, like they're like public goods, right? Like that they create for the community. But then also like the word actually in its like etymology in the you were talking about the learning the Greek. I'm like, it means the work of the people. It's ergos, whatever, however you say that word, but like the it's the work of the public, the work of the people.
So
Anyway,
you-
it
so
just
you could say
cool thing
like
to think about.
the sacrament of work. Like that's not just making.
There you
something
go.
up.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me add a kind of a thought here, because as I was thinking, as you guys were talking about this building that we're sitting in here at the post, it was cinder blocked over and the windows were covered up, right? I think about like strip joints, right?
Yeah.
The windows are covered up, not so that people won't look in and see what's going on the inside, but to keep the people from the inside seeing what exists on the outside. And I think about like art is a way of uncovering the windows to the kingdom, that the work that we do through art uncovers those windows. I mean, we've seen that over and over again in the spaces we're creating, that, we're opening up those windows so people can see the kingdom.
I like that. I've often talked about our work here in Tampa as a performance art, and like a kind of flash mob, as something that is trying to pretend, as in pretend, like ahead of time, tend toward the coming world, to act like it's here now, as like a flash mob or a performance art, to demonstrate the world to come in the midst of the world that is.
Right
And
on.
so that really resonates with me, just thinking about that as like the uncovering windows, like becoming a window in some sense.
Mhm.
There's something I feel like we've got to talk about this more. Maybe we we continue this next week, but for some reason, I feel like this is the most important conversation that we've had. But have you ever sat down with someone? This happens to me all the time. We were just at this thing in Orlando, and I probably had 4 of these, where you just start talking to someone and you start sharing about your life, and you see almost like a gleam in their eye, like something ignites in them. And there's like a return. I guess I keep thinking about that verse I mentioned earlier, because when we're captive, when we're held captive by Babylon, everything turns gray.
Yeah, earlier you said like the color comes back, and I thought that was an interesting way to say that, like mojo, juice, dreams, artistry, like that was the word you used around the lights turn on or color comes
Not
back.
being captivated by the color of the kingdom.
And we're not saying there's no allusion to lack of responsibility, to lack of commitment. See, we're not going down this kind of mystical path. We are mystics in a sense, but we're not going down the mystical path of just live free and go where. No, it's like a doubling down.
You still got to repaint the condo every time a renter moves out, and it takes you 2 days, but then you get potentially another thing to smile about, another relationship that comes in there, but
and a little money.
you still got it every while. There's a couple 2 days.
Yeah.
You got to burn it again.
And I feel like the kind of practical side of this is when you work, God provides. Like this whole, I'm trusting God to provide, man. I'll never forget this guy I met in Africa about 12 years ago. Awesome dude. Loved him so much. But I went 3 times. And y'all, every time I went, this guy would tell me about the car that God's about to provide for him. And he never got the car. This was over a 4-year span. Because he thought his faith was going to produce the car. But faith is kind of, and I don't mean this in the James sense. I mean it more in just the hands, like your faith in what that God has created. He's the great creator, the great artist, the kingdom. You said something this morning about how the kingdom is the kind of personification of art and of artistry. That faith, the faith in that type of personhood is what makes us want to work. I need a car for my family, so I'm going to go work. And I have an idea. I have a creative idea of what I'm going to do. And Paul says in Acts, I don't covet anyone's silver or gold or belonging, but it's by the work of my hands that I've provided for my companions and for the weak. So it's like he had this faith, almost this baller faith of like, I got it. I know how to work.
Yeah. And I would say
So
work is,
last thing.
yeah.
So that's what I see when I'm sitting with people, brothers, sisters who are kind of in this whole story. And I say, bro, get to work.
Yeah.
They kind of come alive.
Yeah.
Color starts coming back.
And what I'm about to say probably deserves a whole nother podcast, but work isn't just for provision, it's for permanence. I mean, the things we make and work towards now persist. I mean, they're going to be permanent. I mean, they're part of the kingdom.
Are you writing down all these cool little alliterations that Rodney has?
Some of them, he has a hand.
By the way, what he just said, and again, write it down, but this is why we have to leapfrog over the Bibo and even Kobo types of thoughts about, how we frame money and like ministry, because Bibo was like, how do I work a job at Starbucks so I can preach on the weekend? Yeah. That's never, permanence is about your ability to stay in a community over the long haul and be a presence there. And it's just a completely different type of what you're shooting for. So,
well, that's I think the next conversation then is we keep this going. And we talk about how business is the mission.
Okay.
Because in our stream,
Not as much, yeah.
in our stream, we've heard for almost 15 years now, business as mission, which is not
Like Christian Yellow Pages stuff.
not a tenet of permanence.
Mhm.
Business as mission is it's like a front. It's like a
Well, mafia,
yeah.
Italian joint.
Like we're tricking you. We don't care about our laundromat. We're just using it as a way to be ministers. And we're saying, no, actually, we want you to dream about, and I mean this, I have a buddy in South Alabama that's starting to invest in laundromats. And y'all, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This guy is like just a normal, kind of straight-laced dad. And he goes into these laundromats at night to collect money. And almost every time he meets somebody who's in a certain place that he can just sit with them, like sit on the bench or on top of a dryer and just listen to their story. And he's got story after story after story. I've told you the stories of our property manager, one of my good friends in Birmingham, who was a pastor in a traditional church setting, left that world, didn't have to, but left that world, started running this property management. And then out of these 18 doors, he just started building relationships with all these people. And that was his art. He would go to collect rent or to fix a doorknob or to see what's going on with the heat. And then he would just sit and hear story all day, just sit and hear somebody's news story. And these are the things, it's like, bro, when your business is the mission, that's it. You're just a great property manager. You're just a great laundromat owner or whatever it is, bike shop. You look like you got something, so just jump in.
No, it just echoes that whole like sentiment of like serve the work and let the work serve the people. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having
might
more
just-
of this.
It might not use my dumb long title. It might just be called Do the Work. Maybe that's what we go with today. By the way, Taylor, when we were doing bloopers at the beginning, Taylor read an excerpt that he had written for the Brave City book that did not go in. But I think we want to make it available as like a little, it's like a little 2-pager that sort of, I think, summarizes a lot of this. So we'll try to get that to you, John. Maybe we
Okay,
can provide
great.
that somewhere. All right.
Hey, also, let's put the Dorothy Sayers
Yeah.
link in the show notes.
Yep. That's great.
All right. Yeah, I got to get better about show notes.
Yeah, I actually don't know what show notes are.
There's just where you go listen to a podcast. There's
Sounds
like
good, though.
links, but like, man, people that do them like at this timestamp, this is what we're talking about. And you can click through, like, there's no way I'm doing all that, but I could drop a link or two. Yeah, we could do,
Yeah.
Do the work, bro.
do the work. Do the
Hey,
work.
and we might even, by next week, we might even have a link to the new hit song Fence Line.
There we go.
For
That's
sure.
good.
Carding top.
Gonna
or
finally get
topping
paid.
cards and stuff, yeah.
Grammys.
Heading to
Here
the
we go.
Grammys. Somebody's gonna hear it and there's gonna send it to Stapleton and he's gonna want to do it. And then we're gonna get paid.
Don't you have a friend that's friends with,
Yeah, I got friends that know people.
let's
Just wait, y'all. Fence Line is coming. I actually think there's 4 other songs called Fence Line. Cause I Googled it, so probably lose on that right there. All right. Over and out.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, see you.